Good morning. Good morning. I'm Stacy. We are loving my veteran, and this is walking in my shoes. Again, I'm going to go ahead and get the stuff out that has to be out of the way. Um, we're not licensed professionals here. We just give advice based on personal stories and what we experienced. If you need help, reach out for professional help. And as always, all information and content of this is copyrighted to Loving My Veteran and Walking in My Shoes. So I just want to put that out there this morning. So I want to say good morning to everybody. I have to have my coffee as we get going here, always. We have a lot going on this morning, as we always do. We're going to finish up our series on creating a loving, lasting, healthy relationship. And it's just something that we've worked on all week, all month, on how to build that, how to look into ourselves to build that relationship, how we have to build a healthy, happy relationship with ourselves, how all of that comes into play to be able to build that relationship with our veteran, with anybody else that we encounter. So today, and Carl is aware, I'm going to share our story. I want you to see the struggles we went through firsthand, and relate them to you, what we went through, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm going to be blatantly honest and be able to share these stories. Sorry, I got to turn off that. And share these stories with you because I think that it gives insight as to the struggle we went through to get to where we are now. Um, Early on, we're like everybody else. We've had this great relationship. We talked on the phone a lot before we physically met each other. So we learned a lot about communication then, and we had very open lines of communication then. And it was very important to us to have that. And then, of course, we met. Now, give me a little back history. I was recently divorced from a 28-year marriage, and Carl had been divorced for a long time following his marriage. There was a lot of baggage that both of us had that we brought that we didn't necessarily, we knew about it with each other, but we didn't necessarily realize how much our baggage was going to affect where we were into our relationship as we started to go through this. So we're going to fast forward a little bit to the fact that when we moved in together and started living together, very soon into this, and I should have known then that it was the first sign that that man really loved me. I didn't understand PTSD to the level I do now. I mean, I know it existed. I was a paramedic. I'd experienced it. I got it. I knew what it could do, but I never lived with it. So early on, Carl's going to meet my family, and not just meet my family. We're going to Disney for 5 days. Um, Day one, upon arrival at Disney that night, we go to the luau of the Polynesian. So, never thinking about monorail, never thinking about all the crowds, never thinking about we had reserved seats up front, never thinking about where he's going to sit, where his back can see everything, never thinking about the fire that they were twirling. Didn't think about any of that. It didn't even dawn on me that that could be a stressor. He went and he sucked it all up for me, and he met everybody. And then, of course, we went into the parks, and the one day we were in the Magic Kingdom, it was at capacity. Okay, even I started to feel like I was claustrophobic, and I was just always looking around on me. And so I can't imagine the place it put him in. And so I have to say that not thinking about that that should have been the first sign that he really loved me, was that he went to this place and never shared what he was going through on that in that place. We watched fireworks. I mean, it was all of it, and um, I never realized where it put him at that time. So, as you know, new couples living together, things just kind of happened, and I didn't realize what my life was going to be like. I didn't realize the dates. I didn't realize any of that. And so I spent a very long time not understanding. Like, why are you mad at me? Why can't you just see that I need to hold you? Why can't we do these things? And I was angry, and I would cry, and I can remember going and sitting in the shower, and sitting on the floor in the shower. Um, yeah, it does. So it was bad. I can remember sitting on the floor in the shower and just letting the water run over me, and I was just crying, and I'm thinking, but I love him. Can I do this? I finally found the person I love. Can I do this? There were days that I would sit there and I would say, why am I doing this? I just felt like I was drowning. I didn't have an answer. I didn't know how to interact with him. I didn't know how to deal with the PTSD moments. I didn't know any of that. And I felt literally like I was drowning. And sitting there and feeling that loneliness and that despair, and when I would say something to him, it would turn into like an explosion, and walking out the door, or doors being slammed, and by both of us, it was just, there was no meaningful communication. um, we talked, but it was not meaningful communication to resolve an issue. So I remember that, and I remember feeling so deep and so alone, and it was like everything became my fault, at least in my mind. It was comments like, I left everything to be with you. Um, you know, I left all this stuff to be with you, and I'm thinking, okay, but what about what I gave up to be with you too? There was never any of this. So in my mind, it was like I was to blame. And I felt just like I was drowning. And I didn't know how to deal with it. And things that he said to me were so hurtful. Like in one breath, he could say, you were the strongest woman I know, and you're strong and you're smart, and you're amazing. And then in the next breath, it would be, if you would have done. And I'm like, whoa, 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 how can I be smart in this, and then you tell me all my failures? And I didn't get it. I truly didn't understand it. So I started doing research. I started reaching out. I started reading. I just started looking for an answer somewhere. And the answers were hard to find. They were incredibly hard to find. And so I felt helpless. I felt like, okay, so I can read PTSD and I can get it. And so, yeah, you got these experiences going on for 3 or more months, and voila, you have PTSD. But it didn't say, this is how you deal with it. Nowhere in the book did it say, hey, this is how you deal with it. It was always about them. Everything you read, every piece of research, everything you did was always about the person with the PTSD. Nowhere was there anything out there on how we struggle through it, how we do it. So our relationship, while we loved each other, there were days it was volatile. It was me screaming, doors being slammed, he walked off in the middle of an argument, and I wanted to get my point across, and he was walking off because, now remember, he'd been divorced 12 years or so, and I had been divorced a year or less, so it was a way different meaning in what we were at. And I wanted to get that last word in, and I can remember him walking down the sidewalk, and I literally jumped on his back. Right? I literally just jumped on his back and was being angry and aggressive, and I wanted just him to shut up and listen to me for a minute. And I didn't realize at that point I was fueling something that was way worse. And I didn't realize that. But I wanted to be heard, and he wasn't listening to me. And so it became ugly. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was ugly. There were nights that he would take his blanket and want to sleep in the truck, and I'm like, "Will you stop?" And it was bad. It was bad. And so we just didn't have this communication. I didn't even begin to understand. And I'm like, "What the hell are you doing, Stacy? Why are you in this relationship? I know you love him, but is this how you're gonna spend your life? Is this how you're going to spend your life?" And the yelling and the stuff that I did, I didn't realize was a trigger to him. But at the same time, I knew that I couldn't allow this to keep going. I can't allow in my mind, I couldn't live with, not allow, because that's a bad word. He is the one who has to make his accountability. But I didn't know that at the time. I was like, well, if we're going to go forward, you have to do. And it was like, I'm giving him this list, like, da, 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 you know, and he's turned off, and he gets frustrated, and he walks out. And here we're back to the arguing and the stuff. But then there were moments that were just like amazing. You know, I shoot competitive archery, and so I'm standing outside and I'm shooting, and he's taking pictures and posting on his Facebook. And when I Robin Hood an arrow, he's super excited for me, and he tells me how much he loves me and all these great things. And then something happens, and it's like a switch, and I didn't know what to do. Um, I didn't know what to do. It just didn't work for me. Elliot, it is true. When they get in it, they don't not only listen to us, they don't listen to anybody. And it was very hard because there was so much that he dealt with in his little toolbox, and it went to a space, and I would like rip open the tops of his boxes and just throw them out there. And I didn't realize what I was doing. So that's how we lived. We lived like that. But then you see the other side. When I was at Disney, I got sick. And things just escalated, and they got worse. And you know, he was with me every minute of that day from then on. Like, I went to the doctor thinking it was going to be a consult, and it wasn't. It was a bunch of pulmonary tests and whatever. And he was at work, and I called him after I got done, and I said, "Hey, look, they did this," and he netted up, and he's like, "I needed to be there." And I'm like, "Well, I thought it was a consultation." And he said, "Now what?" And I said, "Well, I have to have all these tests done." He said, "You need to come get me right now." And he's walked every inch of that journey with me. Every inch of that journey with me. But he was so angry because he wasn't there to protect me during that one part. But when the doctor said, "You can't carry laundry," he did every bit of it. So you could see through this raw ugliness that went on, and you could see the love is there somewhere. And I never doubted the love. Okay, I know that it's not going to do. That's not going to happen. I could see that love coming through there. And what did we do from there? It just, again, I continue to research. I continue to read. I found groups. We did all this stuff, and I hid a lot of it. You know, I hid a lot of it. And yes, Leah, you've done everything you can do. You have. And you have to accept what comes out of it. And my heart breaks for you. And as we're going through this, and I'm like, I don't get it. And so when I started funding groups, I hid it. I hid that from him. Um, Realizing now that that was not a good thing. But I hid it from him because he was very private and didn't want his story out there. Of course, now, he walks by, pats my head, brings the chicken back and forth. He talks about everything so you can see where we've evolved to. So when I was in these groups, I related to a lot of what these people went through. And I read their stories and I was like relating to this. I'm like, hey, like this is in my living room. I live like this at times. But what I found is that instead of being supportive and saying, hey, I go through this, but it's going to get better, or if you try this, it may work, I found all this super negative. And it was, they're not worth it, they're defective. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. So if they're not worth it and they're defective and they're this and it's never going to get any better, why have you been with them for 20 years? I mean, that really just, I couldn't comprehend that. It was discouraging. A lot of it was very discouraging in the fact that they would say, it's never going to get better. They're never going to change. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not living, I love this man more than anything in the world, but I'm not living my life like this forever. So something's got to give. One of the biggest things I did in my mistakes down through all of it was when we really got into it, I told him to get out. When we really got into it, I told him to get out. And I would do that a lot. And I would be like, you need to get out. Get out of my house. Get out. Well, it was our house, right? But I didn't see it that way. It was, you need to get out. Get out. Get out. That was my answer. Not realizing that that was detrimental because one of their biggest fears is abandonment. So, and especially with Carl, he had other issues that came into play in that baggage that he brought into the relationship. So all of that kind of came into play, and I look at it, and we were not communicating at all, other than when we weren't in a space, it was very loving and very kind. But when we had issues, it was not, and it was the get out and whatever. And I can just remember how hard that was. And then as things got worse, obviously in my health and my own depression got worse. Carl was watching me get sicker and feeling helpless, like he couldn't do anything. And so I got so depressed over being told I could never be on an ambulance again, that my life was forever changing, that I tried to commit suicide 3 times last year. And one of them was, I was riding down the road and the gun was sitting in the car, and we live in Georgia, this is what we do. And I took it to a friend of mine who's a paramedic. I saw him standing out in the yard, and we kind of have this unspoken rule that as a paramedic, if you get in that crisis, you just take it to somebody, no questions asked, but they have to keep it for 30 days. And I literally pulled into his front yard and I said, here, just keep it, I'll be back. And he said, are you okay? And I said, I'll be okay, but I just need you to keep it for 30 days. Well, Carl was at home when this happened, and I was probably, 5 or 10 minutes from him, maybe 10 minutes from him. And when he found out what I had done, he said, why didn't you call me? Well, at that particular moment, I didn't know if I had 10 minutes. And so he felt like this trust had gone into that situation. And he just felt like I created this lack of trust for him. And not realizing that I probably ended up living because of that. And then one day I was gonna literally wrap the truck around a tree, and I knew how to do it. And we got into it, and he is sitting there on top of me in the dirt, screaming in my face, "I love you." And it was at that point that I was at my lowest in the dirt. He had wrestled the keys out of my hand. He's got me the thing, and he says, "You're not gonna die. I love you." And as angry and as volatile as we got to get to that point that night, that was the sweetest thing he ever said to me, was "I love you." And it was heartfelt. And I knew that. And at that point, I was like, okay, we got to get through this. We have to find a way to communicate. We have to find a way to make these changes. So again, I literally felt like I was drowning. I could not say, how are we going to get out of this? You know, we both had baggage. We both had all of this stuff in our lives. We had so much going on, and we just had to find a way to communicate. And we sat in a parking lot at Walmart one day, and we were talking about it, and we said, okay, you know, we have to understand that we both come with baggage, and that whatever happened in our past life, we can't judge each other for going forward. You know, we can't. We can't live our life with me and you and my ex-husband and your ex-wife all in this relationship. And that was a good starting point for us. And then it became, how do you communicate? How do you stop the explosive behaviors? How do we stop all the stuff? And so for me, it just literally sat down making that list. I sat there one night and I wasn't sure I wanted to do this. I loved him, but I wasn't sure I wanted to do this. And so I started making that list. And I swear by that list, that list saved my relationship. That list saved my relationship. And what I did was I wrote down everything that needed to, that I couldn't deal with, that I was tired of, that I needed changed, and it was very detailed, and it took me a long time, and I wrote it down. And so I'm looking at this list, and I'm like, wow, this is a pretty long list here. And so I prioritized it, and I went out one morning because I know what time we talk best, and sat down and had a cup of coffee, and I was just going to throw the list out. And start reading it, and I'm like, nope, one or two items. I had picked my top two, and I was going to start with them, and I didn't. Something said flip it around. I said, what do I do? What do I do that triggers you? You know, I want to change something that triggers you. What do I do? And of course, it was yelling, which we all know I still do at times, because we've talked about this 1,000 times. But I actually got to hear why the yelling triggered him. And that was the first sign of real communication for us, was that. And then I said to him, okay, I can live with that. But for me, and I will try. I'm not going to be perfect, but I will try. And for him, I told him, and he had never done that, so I wasn't telling him not to do this. He had never done this. He had never laid his hands on me in anger. I'm not telling you a picture frame didn't get broke. I'm not telling you we didn't get a hole in the wall. I'm not telling you any of that, because that all happened. So I've worked on not yelling. I get better at it, and there's times I get bad again, but for the most part, I am much better about the yelling. And I sit here and I look at where we've come. And it started from that one conversation. And then it evolved to us sitting down with Jeremy and hearing their side. And I think the key for our relationship and the key for us building that healthy relationship was for me to be able to see in the veteran's mind, to see how they were reprogrammed from the day they went into basic, to see how they went in. Um, Erica, I get that. I do. I get the words and how you respond. I get that. But I promise you it will get better because it was that way with us. So when I started to see, that's when we formed Loving My Veteran, was so we could kind of see both sides. And that's why a lot of times I talk about how they're programmed. I'm not saying that they're flawless because they're not, and I'm not saying PTSD is an excuse because it's not. But we tend to use it into an excuse. So I saw that everything was about me. It was what all I did wrong, what the words, how you respond, even how I sat. Okay, because Carl did interrogation stuff, so even how I sat was words that just shouldn't have. I mean, he took them the wrong way, and so we really learned to communicate, and it started small. It wasn't easy. It was itty bitty baby steps in this, and so after we addressed the yelling, and we think, well, so then it didn't stop overnight. We still argued a lot, and it became okay. There's going to be times that I need a timeout. I just need to walk away. And I did. And I would tell him, look, I need 5 minutes. The one thing I had to stop saying was get out of my house. That was a big issue. And it wasn't my house. It was our house. So I had to learn to say our house, even though women tend to say my house just because it's a nesting thing. So I had to learn to stop saying that. But I told him, like, I need 5 minutes. And when I needed 5 minutes, look, and I walked into the other room. At 4 minutes and 59 seconds, he was there. Okay, so if I said I needed 5 minutes, by God, I better get my 5 minutes. If I needed 10, I needed to tell him 10. And so we went through that. And we learned to communicate on that level initially. And then as we went through further and further into our thing, we now have conversations that say, but I heard. Right? And last night was a prime example. We did Let's Talk last night, and we had so much fun. But we did Let's Talk last night, and it was late, and we always do steaks after Let's Talk because they're quick and they're easy for us to fix. And he wasn't quite ready to eat, and I had to eat. And so we'd say, he said, like, I'll cook them. I'm like, no, I got to cook mine. Do you want me to go ahead and cook yours? And he's like, no, I'll do it. So I cooked the steak for me and fixed my dinner. And then he comes back in a little while later with a bowl of cereal. I said, what about, you said you cook it. He said, well, you needed to go ahead and eat. And I said, so you're blaming me? And he says, no, that's not what I said. I said, but that's what I heard. So we have gotten to the point where we can say, that's what I heard. We've gotten to the point where we can have that discussion. We've gotten to the point where we say, but that's what I heard. We've gotten to the point that we go through this. It is so hard to be able to get to that point, but it does happen. It does happen. And we get to these points where we see communication is so much better. And so when he said, your mouth is the problem, it was my problem. I didn't like to admit it, okay? Can I just say that? I did not like to admit that my mouth was my problem. But it was words like, get out. It was my house. On top of the yelling. But those two things were like massive in what I did that created problems in our relationship. Okay? It was massive in what created problems in our relationship. You take somebody who already feels like they feel, and then you say things like, you need to get out of my house, not my house, our house, and you call the other one. So those things were huge for us. Those things were big for us. I made a comment one day. We had the truck sitting out in the yard, and the girl next door started a fire in her yard, like to burn off some stuff. Well, she went inside, and the wind had picked up some, and so the fire was coming, across the yard a little bit. And I was like, "Yeah, you let that thing come and burn and catch my truck on fire, I'm gonna beat you." And he says, "My truck? And your truck?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." So you don't realize the little things that you say and how they trigger them. So we are being able to learn to. I said, "But that's not what I meant." And he said, "But that's what I heard." So we're getting to where we can get to that point. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. I had to make a lot of changes for me, because I realized I was a huge part of the problem in not loving myself, and not being confident in myself, and thinking that I have to fix everything and I have to please everybody, and I can't do that. And it's okay for me not to walk on eggshells. And even if we say something that's gonna upset him, or something that's gonna make him mad, it's okay, because having a conversation where we don't agree is all right, but keeping things from him is deceit, and it creates doubt. So what I'm saying with this is that we navigated through the nonsense. We still do every day. We still get better at things every day. We go backwards, we go forward, we get better. But I'm telling you, little victories. You really start to... Victory cards were a big thing for me. Victory cards were a massive thing for me. Being able to write down our successes instead of our failures was a huge deal for me. It made such a difference in me, being able to look back at where our relationship was to where it's gotten, that it is insurmountable for me. And I thank God every day for that man, who now looks at me when he knows I don't feel good, and will put his arms around me and say, "I love you." To this guy who says, "I'm working on my empathy." To me getting mad the other night because I needed him just to hold me in bed, and he said, "Why didn't you tell me?" And I'm like, "Well, I shouldn't have to." He says, "No, I don't read your mind. If you want this, I love you and I want to hold you. You need to tell me." That is huge in communication. That is massive in communication. We could not have done this a year ago, but we can today. So I wanted to share my story about creating a loving, healthy, strong relationship. We've done it, and we're continuing to do it. It's not easy. It took a lot of self-change on my part. Okay? It took a lot of self-change on my part. And taking out negative words helps the most. When I would stop saying to him, "You did," and I'd start saying to him, "I feel." It's the exact same thing. It was just a change in the way we did it. I said the exact same thing, but I took ownership for my feelings. And there are times he will say, but that's on you. That isn't how I meant it. And you know what? He is right. He is right. That is on me. That is on me. How I took it is on me. And it is hard. But it is so rewarding when you do it. And what works for me may not work for you. But what I'm saying is that it can happen. And there are times it can't. And Leah, again, my heart breaks for you. But you're going to rise up out of this and tell your story. And it's going to be an amazing story. And you're going to become a stronger person because of this. We can all do this. And your marriage may or may not survive this, but your relationship will. The one with yourself, which is the most critical relationship you can have. I have a better relationship with me today than I had a year ago, I promise. And I'm telling you, it is rewarding, because when I had the better relationship with me, the relationship with others is improving. And that is what it's about. Yeah, I've built a loving, caring, healthy, happy relationship with my veteran. But more importantly, over the last year, I've built a loving, happy, caring relationship with myself. And that was key. Building that relationship with yourself is key. So I just wanted to share a story. I wanted you to know that it wasn't all perfect. And there are still days it is not perfect. There are still those moments it is not perfect. But those moments are less and less and become less and less significant. And we are better for what we do every single day. Y'all are an amazing community. I love you so much. You inspire me in ways I just cannot begin to tell you. All of you and your stories, they inspire us. So, I'm Stacy, and this has been Walking in My Shoes, and we are loving my veteran. And y'all have a blessed day, and I will see y'all on Monday if I don't pop in and do something before then. Bye.